a red flag flying here.
And welcome to Political Unmuted, South Durham's premier live Facebook political discussion Tuesday night show. And and lest you think that that is sort of a minor achievement, last week we had the show and the recording that accompanied it had 1,300 views. So we must be doing something right. And it is my absolute joy to welcome yet again the Dream Team. If you look at the advert that I put on my blog, I changed it because it it said Political Unmuted with John D. Clare, and as time goes on, it becomes clear that these guys are the stars, and so I've upgraded you. I'm still first on the billing, but it's now John D. Clare and the Dream Team. Freddie and the Dreamers, Cliff Richard and the Shadows. It was won't be long before the Dream Team is going on its own, and we have separate singing careers, and we'll see what happens. And you, listener, are just so welcome, because we've got some cracking stuff to talk about today. But first of all, let's welcome the team. Stuart!
Hello.
Back from holiday?
I am.
Where did you go?
I went over to the lakes.
Lots of walking?
Indeed. Didn't take the dog, though. Didn't take the dog.
Oh.
Missed opportunity.
About him worrying sheep, or just because you wanted a break from the dog?
Didn't think about it, honestly. Well, I don't think it was even my decision.
Most things are not my decision. Now, watch out, Stuart, however, because while you were away, we all know that you have a fan club.
Oh.
While you were away, Samantha, you moved into Premier, we all love Samantha. Everybody agrees that you are a force of nature. You've got your little fan club out there, and no doubt they'll all cozy up to you on the chat. You can comment, people. We have you go to the Socialist think tank. It should be there anyway, and you can make comments about what people are saying. And after the show, in the chill out zone, we sit around and we discuss what you've said. So no doubt people will be saying nice things about you. So you've got some amazing news, some sad news, bad news I've seen, and some exciting news, and have you got anything you want to tell us about that you're not going to take as your moment of the week?
Are you talking about me having to close down my shop?
That was heartbreaking.
Yes. So I run a non-profit organisation. What we do is we hire out things that people might need for young babies, encourage them to live in a sustainable and safe way. So our two main things that we hire out are slings and baby carriers, and cloth nappies. And we've done so well over the last 7 years, that we got to the position where we actually had a shop in Newcastle. It was a bit of a it was underneath a railway arch, so it was very much, we earned enough to keep the doors open. Yeah. We didn't have staff. But unfortunately, the pandemic has hit us. So we got the £10,000 from the government to start with, which was great, and we also got some grace from our landlord, which is also great. But it's now to the point where we have to pay our rent again, and we couldn't say for certain we were going to hit our overheads. So we had to go to our landlords and say, and they were very kind to us actually, because our notice period was meant to be 6 months, and that would have bankrupted us. So they were kind enough to give us a month and to clear our stuff out. And so now we've got enough money to tread water for a little bit with our stock in storage to see how things go. So it is very sad for us.
Next thing, you've developed a relationship with alcohol, I see. Well, football, anyway.
You're talking about me going to children football?
I'm talking about you getting pie-eyed at the football match. We all saw it on Facebook. Don't deny it for a moment.
So
I'm sorry, no, you missed your chance to deny it.
Right,
The
okay.
other thing is
I went to a Saturday afternoon.
Talking about football,
Yeah.
are you prepared to tell us about where a red card is coming into your life?
Okay, so I mean, I don't know yet. I've just applied for the job. I might not get the interview yet, but I've applied for a job with Show Racism the Red Card, which is obviously a fantastic organisation. I'm an ex-teacher, so in theory, I would be a really good fit, especially since I'm like so into anti-racism activism. So yes, fingers crossed.
Well, just turn him drunk to the interview and you'll be fine. Laura, hello.
Hello.
Any good news for us? Obviously not.
It's all bit Groundhog Day. I have no bad news. Does that count?
Good.
Also, my fan base just messaged me privately. So.
Well done, Paul.
Oh my God, Laura, stop making it all about you.
At least we hope it's Paul. And finally, hiya, boss. How are you?
I'm okay, yeah. I don't have a fan base, so we're all right.
No. When you're the boss, everybody hates you. Just learn to live with it. Okay, and now it's time for... We are becoming far too professional. People like the kind of amateurishness of it. That's what attracts them, sort of. But moment of the week. I'm going to start with Laura.
My moment of the week this week is going to be short and quick, John. Can you believe it? And a cheaper one.
A sigh of relief.
So it's actually an amalgamation of two moments of the week. This weekend, I actually went out and socialised for the first time in months. Initially with some work colleagues who I hadn't seen for a long time, and then with some friends who came up to see us. It was just so lovely. It was almost like being back to normal, but in a better way, because it was all very careful and socially distanced and all of that, but it was also just nice to see people. It was all exciting and we had a lovely time. The hangover was totally worth it. So yeah, that was my moment of the week this week. Something different.
I had 2 meetings this week with human beings, this weekend.
Wow.
Sort of one, I was on the television, and so I had to, sort of work with the presenter and sort of, again, socially distanced and all the rest. And then I was at an Extinction Rebellion rally on the Sunday. And
wow.
Did you find that you were scared to
Yes.
go back to meet other people? I found it just...
Yeah.
Instead of getting COVID, I was just scared of meeting them, nervous.
Yeah. But the thing is, I'm a hugger, like a massive hugger. I'll hug people I barely know. So it's really difficult to sort of just be like, hi, how are you doing? To people like I genuinely love. I was like, hello. And I just wanted to hug them.
It was sort of, I shall force myself to walk towards this person and talk to them, look them in the eye, try and look them in the eye. They like you to look them in the eye. It's dreadful. Sort of great. It's great to see things beginning to get going carefully. Stuart.
I was going to talk about my lovely holiday with my lovely family, but since I've already mentioned that, I'll talk about Boris and his trip to Applecross. That was pretty funny, wasn't it? Going, setting up his tent on a hill on somebody's land where he didn't ask permission, and he borrowed 2 dining chairs to climb their fence and set a fire. And then when the landowner come out to give him a telling off, he made a run for it, jumped the fence, and left his aides to clean up his tent. So that's our holiday.
Do you, I mean, what sort of his fiance, there's photographs of him and his fiance on their camping holiday, and they're saying the shadows are all wrong, that she's been photoshopped in. I mean, do you think that's sort of, do you think he was on holiday with his fiance?
I think the opportunity to go on holiday is maybe something that's been organised. I don't believe in all the conspiracy stuff of, you know, the deep fakes of going on holiday in a tent. But I think we're getting to a point where Boris Johnson's normal is so weird that the conspiracy seems far more likely.
Thank you. Paul?
I'm going to go for the confusion in education and the probable U-turns around face masks. I don't know whether that's confirmed yet, but earlier on today there was a big discussion around them doing a U-turn on face masks because, see, I'm not sure if you know about this, but in the government guidance, there's an implied force field around schools which repels COVID. So the only people who it's possible to catch COVID from in a school is a teacher, because the teachers are going around coughing on each other's faces and things, and they're the bad guys. So that actually came out from Public Health England, one of its final acts, I believe, blamed teachers for any transmission in schools. We've also got a study from June which said, well, you know, we've looked into schools and there's very little transmission going on in schools. Well, they were like partially shut in June, so it's not really a like-for-like comparison about what's going to be in September. But we're all going back. Until today, it didn't look like we were going to be wearing face masks. And then there's been a big outbreak in Dundee. 27 people, I believe, infected with COVID in a single school. Which has made people think, oh, you know how we didn't used to think face masks were important, but now we do think they're important. And you have to wear them everywhere apart from the magical school, which will repel COVID just by being a school. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. So I'm due to go back. I didn't have the social anxiety about meeting other people because I've been in schools anyway, meeting up with colleagues and students, and you know, I didn't have that same level of social anxiety that other people might have because I haven't been away from people as long. But yeah, back next week. We don't really know what's happening, and I kind of wish the government would just say, we know it's really risky, we think it's worth taking the risk, rather than saying, no, schools are fine, don't worry about schools, it's impossible. It's almost like they're saying it's impossible to catch it in schools, and if you do catch it, it's either the head teachers or your own fault. Children aren't going to give it to you. And it's just, we all know this is really, really silly. And it feels like we're being not told the truth and not treated like sensible adults.
The quote of the week for me, Paul, was the person who said that you don't need to worry about catching COVID in schools because there's just contact. There's just contact in schools. As though that isn't how you catch it. Finally, Sam.
Yes. I'm gonna. You see, the power's gone.
Sorry, pause, because we just need to wait for the cheer from your fan base. Right, now you can continue. Yes, you can continue.
I'm going to say the power's got in my head. I'm throwing all the rules out, and I'm going to follow on from what Stuart said about this holiday that Boris Johnson has had. I'm still in a Facebook group with my ex-MP, and she put up, she said, is Boris really camping? Because she knows more than any of us what he's really like in real life, and it was just the most bizarre idea that this man would go camping. It's the most un-Boris Johnson thing in the world. but it's funny, isn't it? Because we are in a rise of, there's loads of conspiracy theories at the moment, and there were loads of conspiracy theories about this holiday, that he was photoshopped in. I'm not saying there are, I don't know. That he was actually in rehab was one, that he was on a Russian oligarch's boat is another one they're talking about in the comments there. I think if there's any time to go missing, this is not the time, because now there are about 15 alternate storylines about what happened while he was away. Yes, Anne's put Helen Goodman, angry face. Yes, she is an actual human being that still continues to exist, even though she's not an MP. But yeah, he also, as we've just covered, I am an expert in slings and baby carriers. And
yes, I saw this. I knew you were going to mention this.
And he used a baby carrier very badly. And so I am happy that the Prime Minister used a baby carrier, even if he did just put it on for a photograph, which is what I suspect, because being an expert in slings and baby carriers, I know that if he used that sling tied to him in that way for longer than about 20 minutes, he would have serious back pain. Everything was far too loose and wonky, but basically this caused a huge storm-in-it hiccup in all of the sling and baby carrier groups on Facebook, because lots of people put a picture up and went, oh my goodness, look at him, he needs my professional support, which he obviously does. But then other people were like, oh no, we must be kind and we must not judge people because it makes us look like a bunch of snobs, which it probably does. But I object to being told to be kind to Boris Johnson. I'm happy to refrain from being unkind to him. I am happy to pretend he doesn't exist and walk away. But do not tell me to be kind to somebody, because that is the language of female oppression, actually. We're always told to be kind to people who are nasty to us. And there's a point where it's all right not to be kind to somebody who is actually abusing you. And So I got quite angry at that, and that's my Facebook outpouring that happened, that people may have seen. So yes, very good that he's using a baby carrier. It would have been nice if he'd sought some professional advice. Unfortunately, he can't come to my shop anymore because it's closed.
Sort of, you know.
Isn't it his fourth holiday since he's been PM?
He's definitely had a lot more. Did you see the Gavin Williamson tweet?
What?
Yeah, I'm just saying, is it his fourth holiday since being Prime Minister? I read that somewhere. He's had two certainly since like COVID crisis, and he was on one when it began. So he's doing all right, isn't he?
Yeah.
Goes on quite a few holidays.
Well, that's part of the conspiracy theory, isn't it? That sort of he's going to resign in 6 months because he didn't actually think being Prime Minister would involve work, and sort of really what he just wants to do is the party. He thought it'd just be sort of a big party and he could leave the country to get on with it. So I don't know, we'll find out. Right, thank you very much for your moments of the week, everybody. No, Sam, you don't have to be kind to Boris Johnson. But now
it's time for the big story.
Sam, what did Louise Casey decide she no longer wanted to bring home?
Oh no, I've not done my homework.
Again?
I'm sorry.
Louise Casey was the government's advisor on homelessness.
Right.
And they made her, they put her into the House of Lords anyway, to give her the basis for her work looking after homelessness. And she's been there a few weeks, and she's declared that actually she doesn't want to do homelessness, she wants to be a Lord. And so she's resigned from the homelessness and people are saying that this is a huge disaster, and that they're all getting very worried about homelessness. Sam, is homelessness a big thing that we need to worry about?
Yes, and it's totally unnecessary. Most of you, like me, have done the old door knocking circuit, and I'm sure you, like me, have walked down streets which are literally empty. There are lots of them. There's plenty of space to house people, and there's plenty of fields with masses of planning permission on where we can have housing. They just need to be built. All the planning permissions approved. So the fact that we have homelessness, it's like the food waste situation, you know, the fact that we've got people going hungry when 25% of our food is going to landfill or being disposed of is a disgrace. And it shows that there's enough food, there's enough to go around, it's just distributed incorrectly. And it's distributed incorrectly because it's down to a profit motive. What we need to, I was talking to people about homelessness during COVID today, because there's been this up and down about whether we're going to continue to ban evictions. And I said, actually, what you've got to take one step back and look at is the fact that when we've got a pandemic, it's a social good, it's good for everybody, for people to have somewhere they can wash their hands and go to bed if they are ill. It does no good to our health of our community for those people to be on the streets or put in an accommodation where they're sharing a bathroom with other people. So we have to look at those things from a pragmatic point of view rather than an emotional point of view. Unfortunately, because of the crash in 2018, there are lots of people who are in a position where they have got a house that they don't necessarily want. Maybe a parent died, or maybe a marriage split up or something. They've got a house that they don't actually want, that they can't sell because it's worth a lot less now than it was when they bought it. And those people end up being reluctant landlords. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are the types of people who are being burnt by this ban on evictions. And the reason we've got these people with up and down lifestyles, maybe they have got personal issues, and they're relying on these private landlords, is because we don't have a functioning social housing system. If we had a functioning social housing system, that would be a really good start. We need council houses for these people.
Stop, Sam, just a second.
Yes.
Talk to me about that sentence. We don't have a functioning social housing system. I mean, we have housing associations, so why how is that not a functioning social housing system?
So it's the waiting list for the housing associations tend to be quite difficult to get onto. You've got to be a certain level of need to have a chance of getting into a housing association property, and that's quite difficult here. But if you look at other places, specifically down south, the money you get through housing benefit, which is supposed to marketize the social housing system so that everybody gets a good deal, it means that people can't afford to pay their rent with the benefits they're given to pay their rent. So a lot of people, we get people from different parts of the country moving to the northeast because the rent here is cheaper, but and they then go into private accommodation with their housing benefit, and we don't have the infrastructure to support them. And those are the types of people who maybe churn, they're in a property for 6 months, and things go wrong and then they move on. And those are the types of tenants that really cause private landlords a lot of trouble.
Stuart, how worried are you about, the worry is that we've put homeless people into hotels, into bed and breakfast, so we've found them a place somehow. There's been money to do so, the money is finishing, Now, how worried are you about an explosion? And across and sort of there's 320,000 evictions stacked up now, just waiting to go ahead. So they're terrified that they sort of, that's why they extended it for the extra month, isn't it? They're terrified that this is just going to explode. I mean, how worried are you, or do you think that those fears will?
I'm really worried that we're going to backtrack, because we've got a really good opportunity now to change things, because COVID has forced our hand as a society to make changes to get people into places where they can live. And if we wanted, you know, if there was the drive for it in government, we could begin a system of rehoming them properly in social housing. You know, it wouldn't be an overnight thing. It would take incredible investment, but it's our best opportunity that we've had in a decade to do it. It's the best starting point. It's like a fresh start almost. And if we just, you know, cut all support and people go back on the streets, and most homeless people, you know, have extra needs if they're actually on the streets. There's the invisible homeless, where it's couch surfing, and that is clearly not something that's good for a COVID environment. You know, we've got this opportunity, and it would be, you know, such a shame to waste it.
Paul?
I don't think the government particularly have any intention of solving this crisis long term. We've seen this government consistently vote for more rights for landlords. So they voted at one point to make sure that landlords had no obligation to make their homes habitable for humans. You know, so they've managed to show that it's possible, but long term, I don't think the desire will be there and we're about to see a lot of people fall off a cliff of homelessness, and there's going to be so many in that really, really challenging situation. And I don't believe the help will be there for them. I believe we're about to see a really, really huge crisis. And what comes with that as well is, like, you know, all the other issues to do with homelessness. So, you know, people living on the streets and not necessarily just on the streets, as Stuart was saying, but then there's all the other social impacts of that. And then there's children being brought up in an unstable home, you know, through no fault of their parents, because some of them will have just lost their jobs. But again, I find that people who get very annoyed at the idea of helping homeless people also seem to get annoyed about, like, everything else. And there's a lot of anger directed at people who don't have very much, at the powerless at the moment. And there's not very much anger being directed at the powerful. And that's the wrong situation to have. We should be demanding our government create social housing long term. If something like this had happened, they could have just cancelled rents for a short time. It would have saved them money. But instead, you've got, like, private landlords who continue to pick it up, and then they're going to have to evict people. You know, our very own MP is the biggest landlord in the whole of Parliament. So, you know, he's in a position. I'm not saying he's going to evict anyone, but it shows that people who are in Parliament, they have such an array of landlords there, such a huge number of landlords, that they really are in favour of the landlord. This isn't a criticism of all landlords, by the way. This is just saying that they are far, far, far overrepresented, and they'll look after their own interests before they'll look after the interests of the people.
I think that, I mean, I get a lot more complaints of landlords about the difficulties of their situation than I do from homeless people and people in danger of homelessness about the problems of their situation. It's like Samantha says, some of these landlords, they ended up as landlords through no fault of their own, and now they're sort of trapped with a bad tenant, and it's as bad for them as it is for the tenants. It's sort of, the fault is not wholly on one side. And sort of, I mean, do you see, I mean, is there an alternative to the sort of, I mean, would you just make all housing social housing? Is it the very nature of private landlords? I mean, the system depends on private landlords. How are you going to end that problem, cope with that problem of having more than 50% of the housing market private landlords? What are you going to do about it?
Well, I've been reading a book called Capital and Ideology by Thomas Piketty, and it's all about it's the historical side of it, and we've seen this change over time. We've seen the proportion of land and houses owned by, at one stage the church were a major owner. In the 50s and 60s the state owned a lot of council housing. I think you've got to there's always going to be a balance, isn't there, between private ownership, but as long as there's always somewhere for someone to stay, there should be always somewhere for someone to stay. That surely living a decent life is the very, very bare minimum we can expect a government to want for its people.
Laura finishes off here with a statement from the heart, which I'm sure we can expect.
Well, yeah, as usual. I'm not as angry today though, so I'd like to touch on a few points that everybody has made so far. Starting with Samantha, who said, there's enough food to go around. We have enough wealth to go around. The government have proven that there's no need for homelessness. In a matter of weeks, they managed to house 15,000 people in this country who were homeless. In the blink of an eye almost. That shows me that it's always been possible. They have just made a political decision that those people were not worthy of housing. And that wasn't one of their priorities. I believe it's absolutely a priority that everybody should have a roof over their heads, and everybody should be able to feel safe as a basic human right. And as a government, they should be able to provide that, and that should be absolutely a priority for them. What Stuart was talking about with the sofa surfing, they are the hidden homeless. They're not going to show up on any statistics, but they are homeless people. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have their own place. And that's been going on for a long time, not just through COVID, but I guarantee there'll be a hell of a lot more people who are now with friends and family because of the furlough scheme, or because they've been made redundant during COVID, so they have no income and have been forced to take their families to other families and friends. I'd be interested to see if we could find those statistics, but unfortunately it's not going to happen. And I don't think the government would give you much time on that conversation. I don't think that would suit their purpose, because they want to show that they're doing a good job, so why would they count those in their numbers? Also, the temporary eviction ban was due to end last Sunday, but they're trying to be kind, and they've extended that a month. I don't think we're going to see the impact of what COVID, in terms of a financial impact that's had on people, because some people do have savings. Most people I know are living paycheck to paycheck, but I don't think one more month is going to be enough to really show the severity of what's been happening during COVID. And I think it's only going to get worse from here. And I agree with Paul that nobody should be homeless. We have the ability to house people. We just need the care and the interest in doing it.
Thank you so very much. Brilliant, everybody. Thank you. A really worrying problem. This is the time when we normally have a listener guest question. And the idea is that a listener comes onto the show, asks a question, and we talk about it, and they join in. But for the second week running, we've got nobody asked us a listener question. And so I would urge anybody who's listening who wants to suggest a question to any show. It may be something that isn't in the news particularly, but is a particular beef of yours, and we're happy to chat about it. and sort of it's part of the interaction which we wish to encourage for the show. So I put up the questions, the possible questions, and the poll on questions. You know, on a Friday, just shove your idea there and let's have you on the show and asking about it. But today, we just move straight on, I'm afraid, to... Paul.
Breaking news: face coverings to be mandatory in England schools.
Oh wow!
Oh my
Amazing.
God! Secondary schools.
Yeah, I don't know. I've headline flashed up on my phone, which I use for my notes. But yeah, so that's just happened.
People
So
in the comments, if you'd like to drop any links, that'd be great.
I don't know how many U-turns that is, but secondary pupils in England will have to wear masks in school corridors in local lockdown areas, or after the government reversed its guidance.
Just in local
lockdown
areas.
That's what it says. So it follows updated advice from the World Health Organization. All right, okay. Who said masks should be used from the beginning? Oh, it's new advice. We hadn't read it before. It's been there for months, but it's new to us. So,
I just really feel sorry for all of the school leadership teams who are now going to have to rewrite tons and tons of risk assessments they've been running over the whole summer. Like,
and provide them for people who can't afford them as well. You know, are you going to go for a standard one, or are there certain logos going to be banned and things? You know, it's a bit of a minefield.
U-turn number 9.
Sorry, Stuart.
Is that number 9? Is it?
That's 9 in 8 months.
Wow.
Impressive.
Stuart, do you think that these U-turns are losing the government credibility, or do you think people are just saying, well, this just shows a government that's flexible to a changing situation?
Did it ever have that credibility?
Well, not with us, but...
I remember, because when I first understanding what politics was, like a U-turn was a big deal. That was a black mark. You know, the government might not recover from a massive U-turn, but somehow Boris's government recovers from 8 and now 9.
yeah.
I think that these are chipping away, and we'll have to wait and see. Right. Anyway, the other stories, we got a good listen to Laura's drumming again, and it brings us into our final 2 stories of the evening. Depression has doubled during the pandemic. Laura, tell us all about it.
Yes, so there's been quite a few research studies done recently about I think the ones I've been reading anyway, it was studies on depression anyway, and then they've had to factor in the difference that COVID and the pandemic and lockdown in particular is the impact that's had on depression. They found that it's it's affected most people in one way or another. But it is doubled in women, in people with disabilities, and especially young people as well. So it's something that's sort of been ongoing, and I think the researchers who've carried out this research have been to the government to sort of display this evidence, say this is what's happening to people, and there's an argument there that and I have read some research from some medical professionals who've said that depression can be one of the symptoms of COVID. Even if you've got nothing else, you could fall down with depression basically as a result of COVID. It's all, for me, I mean, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a politician, and as usual, John, I can give you my considered opinion, but also from a personal point of view, and you know, I'm quite open with the things that I go through. I think if you are open and transparent with people, then it can sometimes benefit other people. I've really struggled during lockdown, even to the point where I've had to go and speak to a medical professional about how difficult I've been finding things, and I found that incredibly hard to do. And I'm someone who understands that it's okay to talk about when you're feeling down. It's fine to feel down. But that took me weeks and weeks of building myself up to get to the doctors and actually have a conversation with somebody. So for me, the fact that these scientists are coming up with the idea that the depression statistics have doubled, I actually think it might be higher. I think you'll find a lot of people who are just unwilling to talk about it, because again, we do still have that stigmatism around depression and anxiety and mental health issues, where people just feel lesser of a person if they talk about it, and we do have a long way to go to normalize that.
I went to have my hair done.
It looks fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. Yes, going on the television. I went on the television, and prior to that, I went to have my hair done. And my hairdresser is a crusty old man. God bless him. I've been going to him for about 20 years, and he's very, he's your typical old man hairdresser. And I'll tell you what we need to do about this, and he's very aggressive in his ways. And he was talking to me. I was saying that I'd lost confidence during the lockdown, and he suddenly comes out. He says, "Mental health, John." He says, "Mental health." He says, in our day, in the olden days, you said people were mad. People went mad, and he locked them up. But now he says we're much more sophisticated now. This is this hairdresser, this really sort of crusty old man, grumpy old man, and he says. And mental health now, there's a whole load of other things come into that, sort of worries and concerns and feelings of insecurity and just not being happy. And he says, and we have a much, schooling me on mental health, and he says we have a much greater understanding now of these things than we ever used to do. And he says it's a great concern. And I thought, well, my golly, the world has opened its eyes to this. My hairdresser, I nearly said his name. If my hairdresser is beginning to realise this, I mean, Stuart, do you think that there's been a change in attitude because of towards mental health issues because of coronavirus?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen increased, mental health issues over the last few months. I've, seen it personally, but I don't think people are becoming more accepting of it because of coronavirus. I think it was already there. I haven't seen a practical change. No.
Paul, if there has been a doubling of depression, what is the way out of this then? Did you have any recommendations to make here?
I would say it would help everyone's mental health if we weren't being gaslit all the time by our leaders. I think that would be quite a useful thing for our mental health, because I feel throughout this entire crisis we've been told that they've said, oh no, we're going for herd immunity. We didn't say that. Why are you talking about herd immunity? Well, because you said it in that briefing. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. That's you. What's wrong with you? So there's this, and the system's gone along the whole way, where we've been gaslit. And I think that really can affect your mental health, because how frustrating was, I know it's sort of funny that Dominic Cummings said that he was going for an eye test. But dear me, the impunity with which they'll say these things, that really affects your mental health. Yeah, he's got away with that. That actually really, really affects my mental health personally.
One thing I've noticed about social media is the increase in one, aggression, and two, just the craziest talk. People saying sort of stupid things in this kind of, right there, what are you going to do with that? I've said it now. I'm seeing UFO stories, moon conspiracies. I mean, it's just, and I've got to be careful with my language here, haven't I? But it's just as though social media has collectively, and I'm wanting to say things like lost its mind, gone mad, and I do understand that the impropriety of saying things like that, but sort of, do you find a collective hysteria almost on social media, and do you think that this is linked to it, or do you think I'm just making that up?
There's an issue with remoteness. I believe that remoteness causes problems. So if you look at any, and it seems a little bit abstract, but if you look at any situation in warfare, I think it's around 15% of casualties are not remote, close up. So when you can see your enemy, and then when you're miles away, when you fire a mortars over, or you're firing a cruise missile, or you're dropping a nuclear bomb, you just disassociate from the fact that these are human beings. And on a close-up, people will deliberately miss. There is research that says that people in wars will deliberately miss their enemy because they don't want to murder another human. That's how they feel. Even if they feel that that person's their enemy, there's something within them that says, actually, that's my brother, that's my sister, I'm not going to shoot at them. I think there's a similar thing happening with social media where like people will, if they were saying things to your face, they probably wouldn't say them, but then they will just say anything at all without fear of repercussion, without fear of someone saying, hey, tell you what, that really hurt feelings, or without the fear of being smacked in the face or anything like that. And I think that's what's going on with social media, that remoteness.
Do you not think it's got worse during the lockdown? And I'd be really...
Yeah, I do. And I think that's all part of it, isn't it? It's part of the remoteness. So we've never been as remote. So the people we're speaking to on social media, we might have to face them tomorrow at work. But then you don't have to face them tomorrow. You don't have to face them. You don't know when you're next going to have to face these people. So people are just saying any old thing. And then they're like, yeah, well, I quite like that. I quite like saying this. I'm going to say this one. I'm going to say these horrible things. I know like Samantha's been a big victim of people just, I think some of the people who do it to you would do it anyway. But, I think there are some people who possibly aren't condemning it because they don't have to face other people. They've got nothing to hold their heads high for.
See, the exact opposite's happening with my wife, Barbara, because she keeps saying, I saw this thing on social media, so I told her. And I said, oh, Barbara, you have to. And you just, so she's going around causing all these rows all over Facebook, confronting people who are saying things you cross about. Oh, Barbara, just keep your head down, love. Sam, let's drag it back to the concept of depression and the lockdown. What is the solution?
I mentioned this last year. We need to look at last year. It feels like a year. It was only a week ago. We need to look at the welfare economy and how our economy and our society is designed to be good for people and not just be good for people who want to make money. Is that Laura wanting to talk?
Yeah.
No, I can wait for you to finish.
It's like, oh yes.
It was a very powerful gesture.
Yeah, really powerful. I couldn't miss that. That's it. And we've talked about homelessness. I've talked about food waste. We're talking about really basic needs that people have to have met. Tony in the comments said when we were talking about mental health during lockdown, he was saying he felt a bit embarrassed to say that he'd actually enjoyed lockdown. And then my friend, was it Julie, said it helps if you've got a job, it helps if you've got the basic money coming in. And that's really, we've been able to be all right in my house because our income hasn't changed, but a lot of people's income has changed. And obviously wondering about whether you're going to be able to afford your rent or your shopping has a massive effect on your mental health. So these are the basic needs people need. Derwentside Mind, is it Derwentside Mind? A mind shop has closed. So that there are lots of places. Stephen, bless him, said earlier that he thought that places that supported vulnerable children and parents should be supported through this. And non-profits that support people with mental health should be supported through this. You know, my organisation and Mind are the types of organisations that you would hope the government would support, so that we can support other people, so that we can get through this with some cohesive mental health. So that's it, really. Laura?
Laura?
Thank you. I mean, God, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with what Samantha's saying there. The government should absolutely support people and businesses who are trying to do that. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the government to get the finger out of the backside and actually do something, what I found really helped me is just find your people. Find the people who get what you're going through, and trust me, there are thousands of them. Until you start talking to people, or you don't know the amount of mums who have tried to work from home with small children at home, who just are looking for an outlet, looking for somebody to go, oh my God, I can't do this. And to know that that feeling is completely normal. There are thousands. Find your people, talk to people, bounce ideas off each other, even if it's just having a bit of a rant. It really does help. And John, like you, I was suffering massively with my confidence throughout lockdown. I didn't dare speak to people. Zoom calls became a problem for me. The idea of doing this tonight was a complete no-go. But I mean, obviously I have the support of a wonderful husband and a gorgeous family, but you do need to find the people who are struggling with the same things you are, just to make you feel a little bit normal, and to understand that actually what you're going through is okay. So I would suggest people talk to their friends and feel heard.
The number of, just before I bring you in, Paul, the number of young mothers that as I just scanned down and sort of the phrase, I had a complete meltdown today.
Yeah.
Just words similar, just occur again and again and again. And I think a lot of it's because it's just going on and on and on and on. It isn't a crisis. Then we get through the crisis. It just stretches out into the distance. And sort of, how long can I stand this pain? Paul, just briefly, please, and then I'll bring it to an end. We are running out of time.
Just to link it back in with education again, I've done this quite a lot today. There was a study that also went out that said teenagers have had their mental health issues reduce. So what in the world are we doing to them in our schools if this crazy situation has been better for teenagers, according to this study, which is only one study, we can't necessarily generalize from it, but you know, that's a real worry for me, that teenagers have been doing better under these conditions, because I can only assume that the exam system, the system, you know, that's caused so many problems lately, is causing people this deep amount of anxiety. People aren't really enjoying the learning. People aren't enjoying going to school. And, you know, a lot of people do, and schools do a great job, but dear me, if they're finding this better.
I think that, I absolutely agree. One of the things I used to say when I was teaching, and I don't teach anymore, as you know, but sort of for many children, school is the place where they are really loved, and it's a caring environment, and it's sort of, you should leave school having been happy. Right, now, last thing is, how much do we need to worry about migrants in dinghies? And it's your topic is this, Paul. If you can lead off, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, so there's a lot of this has been going for years, hasn't it? Like there's years and years. If you go back through the Daily Mail or the Daily Express or anything like that, so they've got like the old This Morning map where they used to, you know, that's how big Britain is. It's like, you know, you can fit 8 people on, and Britain is a soft touch apparently. So because we've such a soft touch, and because our borders are so open, people decide to come here on a raft made out of plastic bottles. So the point I'm trying to make is here that people are making this huge deal about a number of people who are absolutely desperate, trying to come to this country to claim asylum. Perhaps they've been fleeing other wars. wars from around the world, some of which our country might be involved in, and they might not be safe there, and it really is a desperate act. And we're seeing this massive worry as if this is the biggest problem our country faces. You know, wave after wave of people are coming here, and they simultaneously are illegal immigrants, but also are claiming benefits somehow. And we don't know where they are, but they're definitely claiming benefits and using the NHS, even though they're not registered to do so.
What you said, they're coming here seeking a safe place of safety. How do you deal with that argument? What do you say to that argument which says they've passed through half a dozen safe countries to get at Britain? If all they were seeking was a place of safety, surely they would have stopped far short of Britain. How do you overcome that argument?
I think some places, like countries, will take a certain number of people on for a longer term, in a longer term way, and some of the people who are travelling through, let's say France, for example, which is a safe country, or Italy, which is a safe country relatively, they're travelling through those countries, but they might not be allowed to stay there. They might not be allowed to do that, or there may be a family connection, or you know what? These people might be coming over here because just like everyone who lives here who says that they're really, really proud of Britain and they think it's the best country in the world, maybe they do. Maybe they want to be here because, you know, they want to build a life. They think, you know, we've got such great people here. They want to build a life here. A lot of them speak English. A lot of them. So there was a big problem in Iraq with people who worked as translators for British forces, American forces, speaking English, of course, for them. They had that, and then all of a sudden, these people may be seen as traitors. They may not be safe once the military have gone. So they have to leave. So maybe they think, well, you know, the British will look after us. You know, I think to necessarily take it as this really negative thing that they want to come to Britain, I think that's kind of a bit contradictory when you're saying, oh, Britain's the best country in the world, and yet, well, why would you want to come here?
Thank you,
It's
Paul.
a bit of a strange argument.
What are you worried about being swamped by immigrants, illegal immigrants?
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I think we should be proud about the amount of migrants that find a home in Britain and make a life in Britain. I mean, I would imagine a lot of the hysteria of illegal migrants is whipped up by the websites that claim that there's already 1 million here, and you know they cost us £7,000 a year each. You know, all that. It's very hard. Like, I've never met an illegal immigrant in my life. I've never come across somebody who's been here illegally. You know, that has to mean something, especially around here.
I mean, I get worried for them because part of the reason you've never met one is that a lot of them are being exploited in some way. The living in barracks and we're being put out to work as cheap labour, and they're being exploited. It's being here illegally is not a happy life for them at all, and for many of them it amounts to slavery. Laura, one of the issues is I'm reading in the newspapers that this is a real Achilles heel for the Labour Party, that Labour immigration is something that loses Labour votes. I mean, can you explain why that might be so, and is it true, do you think?
Well, I think the reason it might be so is because number one, the media have never really particularly been on our side. Two, Brexit caused a lot of division, a lot of discussion around immigration. It was one of the tools used to create a divide. And notably in the Labour Party, there was a divide between pro-Brexit and pro-Remain, which somehow boiled down to immigration. It is always going to be an issue. whichever way you look at it, whichever side of the coin you're on. For me, though, the idea of migrants seeking refuge, which, can I point out, is not illegal. It's not illegal to look for refuge in a country. It's not illegal to seek asylum. There just aren't any safe legal passageways to get here to apply for it yet, which I find ridiculous.
Now, that is the nail on the head, isn't it? And that's why they have to risk their lives to dinghies, because unlike other countries, we do not have places in France or in other countries where you can apply for asylum in Britain. You have to actually get to our shores. And sort of my point on that is that, and given that, when I learnt that sort of, we are, those poor people who drown on the way, that's our damn fault. Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
Because we
but-
would have had to try, if we'd have done what other countries do, and have a place where they can actually apply for asylum out with on the European continent.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things about that, in keeping with the Brexit argument and the whole idea around keep Britain sovereign, and we're being sold this thing that we need to look after ourselves, and the fact that people are dying and the way the media are portraying that. We saw the way they demonized a 16-year-old, and now they're saying, well, actually it doesn't really matter, you can get over that because he wasn't a kid. Abdullah, hang on, what's his name? I'm going to try and get it right, sorry. Abdul Fattah Hamdallah, I think his name was, the young man who drowned off Calais trying to get here, was actually 28, not 16. And the media are now trying to say, oh, well, he was 28. What does that matter? Does it matter what age you were? If you were desperate enough to get into a dinghy to try and find a place of safety, it doesn't matter if you were a child or if you were an old man, if you're a woman, it doesn't matter. We should have been there.
He was still somebody's
We're
sweet.
still a human. We should be humanists, Christians, humanists, whatever you want to be, people who basically care. And I thought Great Britain was based on that notion, and I'm starting to believe that maybe it's not. And that's
Better than,
happening.
we're a better nation than one that laughs at the fact that in the Daily Mail comment section that somebody's
Absolutely.
bring this to a close, Samantha. The last word from you, and then we close the show. Believe it or not.
Well, I mean, like the point that I made earlier, there's plenty of space to go around. There's plenty of houses that are unoccupied in Shildon. Speaking for Shildon, I know that for a fact. You have to ask yourself, people who say, oh, you know, they've travelled through other safe countries before they've come to us. You have to ask yourself, if you couldn't live in England anymore, would you go and live in Spain or France, or would you try and get to America or Australia? Because actually you look for common things like where your family are and what language you speak and what culture you are familiar with. And the reason that people in other parts of the world are so familiar with our culture is because we were a colonial power for a lot of time, and we exported our culture to the rest of the world. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people feel like this, you know, the streets of the UK are paved with gold, because that's what we told them when we went there. So we need to take some responsibility for that, because we are in the situation we are with the wealth that we've got off the back of these people and their ancestors. And we need to look at the global arms trade that we participate in, whether we personally bomb these countries in the Middle East or whether they've just got a made in UK sticker on them. We are culpable, and we need to look at the actions that we take that cause these problems and cause refugees. So both of those things are things that I would point out. But also the argument that, you know, why do they all come here is just a false argument. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the world's refugees that do come to the UK. And most of the countries closer to the Middle East take a lot more refugees than we do. And they've got much less infrastructure and much less means to look after people. If they can, we can. I mean, to quote the great Tony Benn, if you can afford to hurt people, you can afford to help people. I always come back to that, and we certainly can. These people are not sponges. They are architects and doctors and nurses and teachers, and they can enrich our society. Like John alluded to earlier, the vast majority of illegal immigrants end up in some kind of modern slavery. They tend the cannabis farms. They work for less than the minimum wage. They don't have access to the NHS in the way people think they do. They don't have access to any benefits. They don't have any rights at all. They are used in the sex trade. You know, they are not living a rosy life, and they definitely deserve our sympathy and empathy and help rather than anything else.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the Dream Team, you've delivered yet again. I'm in awe of you. Thank you so much. I'm sure the listeners are as enlightened as I am. What happens now? We're going to play No Pasaran, and then we come back, listener, to talk about. Have there been comments? They sound as though there've been some interesting ones.
Yeah, there's been like hundreds of comments.
Right, okay. Well, we're going to come back after for the chill out zone, which lasts about half an hour, and we're going to look at your comments, and we'll be asking the team what they think of those. Samantha tends to take the lead in that because she's the only person who can sort of, what's it called, multitask. At least multitask. So goodbye. If you're going now, God bless you. Thank you very much indeed. See you next week. A fabulous show planned. But sort of, you're welcome to stay on for the chill out zone, and sort of just in case I got into trouble last week because I said we just moved to and nobody got a chance to say goodbye to those people who are leaving. So everybody, here's your chance to say goodbye to those people who are leaving. Goodbye. God bless. See you next week.
Bye.
And
Bye.
no background. Thank you.
Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid, and I'll live and die by this vow that I made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they said, and around Maria we hide. When I first left for all them months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. For an ambulance driver, my shot's pretty sure. And around Maria, we are. Let's sing it! No pass around, no pass around, no pass around together. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here. I told my mother now, mother, be strong. For the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone. For around Maria, we are. Come on! No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come from our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. The case may be cut, and the cast may be cast. You armies of darkness, you priests to your west. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those fast. And around Maria, we are. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Keep the red flag flying here.